Hey, everybody. I'm Megan Bartlett. I'm the founder of the Center for Healing and Justice Through Sport. And I want to talk to you about something that we all think we understand, but maybe we don't, not fully. The real power of sport. I grew up believing that sport was the safest place in the world, where I could push myself, belong to something bigger, and feel strong in my own skin. But I also saw what happens when the focus shifts from people to performance, when the only goal that matters is winning. Later, working with young people who'd experienced trauma, I saw something that I'll never forget. The same field that can hurt can also heal. That when done right, sport can change the biology of stress, rebuild trust, and reconnect kids to joy. And that's when it hit me. We've been sitting on one of the most underused, undervalued tools for mental health and healing that exists, because nothing heals like sport. Now, before we go further, I want to invite everyone into this conversation, no matter how you've known sport. Maybe you're a sport parent. Maybe you're a fan. Everyone watches women's sports. Thank you. Maybe you're a former athlete, and maybe when you played, it was the best thing in the world. Or maybe it left a few scars. Wherever you're coming from, bring that with you. Because sport's one of the few things that touches everyone, regardless of where you live or what you believe. Now, I'm going to ask you to reflect on your experience with sport. This is the audience participation section of the talk. When you think of the power of sport, when it's done right, what do you think it gives people? If you think the best thing sports gives us is community, like being part of a team, learning to work with people who aren't like you, practicing effective communication, or having people who've got your back, I want you to raise your hand. If you believe in those things, great. Nothing builds community like sport. If you think the best thing sport gives us are life skills, problem solving, goal setting, taking risks, trying, failing, and trying again, I want you to raise your hand. Yeah, nothing prepares us for life like sport. And now, raise your hand if you think the best thing sport gives us is a well-regulated nervous system. Hey, this is more than I've ever seen before, but maybe you read the program. All right. But that's why I'm here, because the real power of sport, the one we're overlooking, is its ability to regulate our nervous systems, to help us heal. And that, it turns out, is the foundation for everything else. Okay, here's the nerdy part. The part where I get to talk even a little bit about my favorite topic, the brain. Before I start, I'm going to tell you something that my favorite child psychiatrist and neuroscientist, Dr. Bruce Perry, always says. Wait, oh my God, is he your favorite child psychiatrist and neuroscientist too? We have so much in common. He always says that the answer to every question about the brain is that it's a little more complicated than that. So I'm going to tell you some things about the brain in simple terms, knowing that we can all agree that there's nothing at all simple about the brain. First, regulation. Regulation is our ability to stay calm enough, connected enough, and safe enough to think, to learn, to love, and to grow. Those things all happen in the higher, smarter, more complex parts of the brain. But we can only access those parts once we know that the parts in what's going on in the lower part, the parts that are here to keep us safe, say to us, yeah, we're okay. Everything's okay. These lower regions are constantly scanning for threat. They're asking questions like, am I safe? Do I belong here? When a young person's environment says no to either of those questions, when they live with too much stress or not enough safety, the brain shifts into survival mode: freeze, flight, fight. And if that stress happens day after day, it becomes harder and harder to access the higher parts of the brain that allow them to focus, plan, and connect. It's like trying to do calculus when you're standing in the middle of the freeway. You can't, because your brain isn't solving problems, it's dodging cars. That's the reality for too many young people today, living in chronic stress, cut off from the parts of themselves that can imagine, connect, and thrive. But here's the good news. There's already something that can help bring them back. And it's hiding in plain sight on the courts, the fields, and the playgrounds across the country. We know instinctively that movement makes us feel better, but the research goes deeper. A national study of more than 11,000 kids found that those who played team sports had fewer mental health difficulties than peers who played no sports at all. Other studies show that young people who stay engaged in sport through adolescence report lower levels of anxiety and depression in adulthood. And girls who play sports not only report lower rates of depression and anxiety, they describe stronger connections, more confidence, and better coping skills. But the real magic is why. Why does dribbling a basketball calm an anxious mind? Why does swimming laps help someone recover from a hard day? Why does being part of a team make hard things more bearable? Because when we do it right, sport gives us three of the most powerful ingredients for healing: movement, connection, and challenge. Movement. Nothing regulates like sport. Sport is full of patterned, repetitive, rhythmic activity: running, swimming, dribbling a basketball, playing catch. Those rhythms can be regulating. They calm the stress response. From the time we're infants, the sound of our mother's heartbeat is associated with safety. So when we move in rhythm, in patterned, repetitive, rhythmic ways, our bodies remember that we're safe. Connection. Nothing connects like sport. As humans, we're biologically wired to connect. When we're surrounded by people we trust, coaches, teammates, peers, we can let down our guard and be fully engaged. Trust is the antidote to stress. And no environment models trust and belonging better than sport. Challenge. Nothing builds resilience like sport. If you're like me and you know a young person who's been impacted by overwhelming stress or trauma, your instinct might be to wrap them up in bubble wrap and hope nothing bad ever happens to them again. And that might keep them from further harm, but it won't help them heal. Because the opposite of overwhelming stress is not no stress. It's the right dose of stress. You don't start weight training by trying to bench press 300 pounds. You start with a little weight, and then you add a little more. And then you add a little more when you're ready for it. The right dose of stress, not too much and not too little, teaches our brains how to recover. That's how resilience is built, through safe struggle, not being thrown into the deep end or kept out of the water. Movement, connection, and challenge. That's the biology of healing, and sport delivers all three. The problem is we don't always do sport right. Too often the environments kids play in prioritize winning over well-being. Coaches don't have what they need to be able to meet kids where they are. Because while we often treat sport like a luxury, we don't support the people delivering it that way. And even the best coaches can't do this work alone. Because we know that a dysregulated adult can't regulate a dysregulated young person. If we want coaches to help kids heal, we have to invest in helping coaches heal too. That means giving them not only the training to understand the brain, but also the support, community, and care they need to stay regulated themselves. With Nike's support, the Center for Healing and Justice Through Sport is doing this. We're bringing this message and the science behind it to coaches, athletes, and communities around the world. We're building momentum for a different kind of sport, one that ensures young people, no matter where they live, what they look like, or what they've been through, walk away from sport with more than just sport skills. One where coaches have what they need to show up grounded, present, and ready to put kids at the center. Through the MOVE Fund, seeded by Nike, we're bringing funders together to support local coalitions who know how to make sport work for their communities. And together, we're proving what's possible when we stop treating sport as a game and start treating it as a catalyst for social change. So today, I want to ask you, organization leaders, policy experts, community builders, to take a second look at sport. Not just as recreation, not just as competition, but as one of the most powerful, ready-to-scale solutions for healing that we already have. The infrastructure's in place, the fields, the gyms, the parks, and the millions of coaches who show up every day for kids. We just have to invest in helping them get it right. Because before kids can learn, before they achieve, before they thrive, they have to heal. And nothing heals like sport.